Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. Swiss police said that dozens of people have been killed and over 100 injured following an explosion at a ski resort of Crans-Montana. According to witnesses, the incident may have been caused due to ill use of pyrotechnics during New Year's Eve celebrations in the La Constellation bar. More on that in just a moment, but first, tonight's headlines. We want the end of the war, not the end of Ukraine, Zelenskyy says in his New Year address. Deepening dependence on Russia, that's at stake in elections in the heart of Africa. How Poland's doctors refine modern surgery in 2025. Sadly, we begin our first World News Tonight this year with tragic news coming all the way from Switzerland. A ski resort in Crans-Montana saw a fire break out at 1:30 a.m. at the La Constellation venue, leaving 40 people dead and over 100 injured. The cause of the fire has not yet been made public as it is still under investigation, but prosecutors emphasized they don't believe this to be orchestrated attack. Konrad Gorlinski has more details on this New Year's Eve tragedy and how it unfolded.
In the ski resort town of Crans-Montana in the beautiful Swiss Alps, this a joyous celebration bringing in the new year turned into this. One of Switzerland's worst disasters, a tragic fire that has left dozens dead and over 100 injured. The luxury alpine ski resort town of Crans-Montana is located here in the canton of Valais in southwestern Switzerland, about 40 kilometers north of the famous Matterhorn Peak. The blaze broke out at around 1:30 a.m. local time at a venue called La Constellation, which was packed to the brim with partygoers who had come to continue celebrating the new year.
What should have been a night of celebration and togetherness turned into a nightmare. It was marked by a tragic event that seriously injured and claimed the lives of many people.
Emergency services in the Swiss canton of Valais mounted a major response, deploying 10 helicopters, 40 ambulances, and around 150 rescue workers to the scene.
We currently have around 100 injured, several seriously, but also several dozen people who are presumed dead, unfortunately.
Most of the injured, many with severe burns, were taken to hospitals in the Valais region, where intensive care units are now full. Swiss authorities say a specialist burn unit in neighboring Italy has also been placed on standby. Well, the cause of the fire is still under investigation, but prosecutors have stressed that there is no indication of an attack.
An attack has been ruled out. That has been clearly ruled out because of the explosion. And a fireman could explain this better than I could, which was actually due to the air catching fire and not an act of terrorism.
Firefighters say early reports of an explosion likely resulted from the fire itself as it spread rapidly through the building. Witnesses told French media that the blaze may have started when a birthday sparkler ignited the wooden ceiling at the Constellation bar.
I didn't see how it started, but it seems to me that there were some ladies, waitresses, with bottles of champagne with little sparklers, and they got too close to the ceiling. Yeah, that's it. And well, it suddenly caught fire.
They described chaotic scenes and a difficult escape through narrow stairways as smoke filled the venue. Investigators are now working to identify the victims, a process officials warn could take weeks because of the severity of the burns.
I repeat, the priority is really on forensic medicine. Reinforcements have been requested from our neighbors to help us identify the deceased.
Authorities say several nationalities are likely involved. France has confirmed that at least 2 of the injured are French citizens, while other countries, including Poland and the UK, say they're monitoring the situation. A helpline has been set up for families seeking information.
We also have an international aspect that will come into play since, as you can imagine, on New Year's Eve at a resort, some of the victims will obviously be from different countries, which will also raise certain issues and challenges, including diplomatic ones.
Swiss President Guy Parlement arrived at the resort this afternoon in a sign of solidarity with the families who are in anguish on this first day of 2026. Thoughts and prayers have already been coming in from all corners of the globe, including from neighboring France and Italy.
I would also already like to thank all foreign governments, particularly the neighboring countries who are showing solidarity and who will work with Switzerland to help care for those who are among the severely burned.
What should have been a joyous day full of enthusiasm for the new year in Switzerland, Caen, Montana, today is one of mourning and somber reflection. For TVP World, I'm Conrad Gorlinski.
Either the world stops Russia's war or Russia drags the world into its war, said President Zelenskyy in his address to the nation on New Year's Eve, as Ukraine enters its fifth year of full-scale invasion. And while the majority of his speech focused on lasting alliances with Ukraine's staunch supporters, he also highlighted the difficult path toward Washington's recognition and understanding, all while Ukrainians welcome 2026 in the dark, with air raid sirens in place of music and Shahed drones in place of fireworks. Natalia Komarov has more details.
Дорогі українці, дорогі українки.
On New Year's Eve, the biggest holiday of the Ukrainian calendar, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy delivered an address to the nation and to the world.
Сьогодні є тільки
There are only two options. Either the world stops Russia's war, or Russia drags the world into its war.
Zelenskyy, who had returned from his world tour just hours prior to filming this video, dedicated much of his address to the importance of Ukraine's allies, naming Poland, the Baltic and Nordic states, Spain, Italy, as well as other staunch supporters of Ukrainian independence. But while speaking of his relationship with the White House under President Donald Trump, from the first famously tense meeting at the Oval Office to his latest visit to Mar-a-Lago, Zelenskyy expressed how difficult the path towards Washington recognition and understanding has been. He underlined that he won't sign any, quote, Minsk-style meticulously drafted trap. At the same time, he repeated that
мирна угода готова.
The peace agreement is 90% ready. Only 10% remains unfinished. And that is far more than just numbers. Those 10% contain, in fact, everything.
According to Natalia Volosatska, Ukrainian journalist for Slava TV, this year's address was different in tone from a year ago.
A year ago, the president stood at the Mother Ukraine monument in Kyiv, this time in his office, only lit by candles and a Christmas tree. Last year's address seemed more emotional. Zelenskyy recalled certain events and conversations with ordinary people, the shelling of Okhmatid Hospital and the frightened sick children.
Of course, the citizens of Ukraine were still the most important audience of Zelenskyy's address. Those who celebrated in the dark with only the music of air raid sirens. Those whose celebrations were cut short because of drone and missile strikes. And those on the front lines who don't celebrate at all, who sacrifice everything so that others can.
Для Збройних сил України
For the Ukrainian armed forces, the priority is defense against our insatiable occupier. This is why I want to assure you we are here, and we will stay here.
My dad defends me, so I believe in peace, that everyone will return home.
I will raise a glass to victory. I believe that we will stand firm in this war, but the price will be very, very high.
And so Zelenskyy was spot on with his New Year wishes of not just peace, but a just peace.
Чого хоче Україна?
What does Ukraine want? Peace? Yes. At any cost? No. We want the end of the war, not the end of Ukraine. Are we tired? Extremely. Does that mean we are ready to surrender? Those who think so are deeply mistaken.
Сильно.
Zelenskyy's Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin also put out a message for New Year's Eve, and he spoke not of peace but of continuing to fight for the sake of great Russia. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
The winds of change can be felt in the Catholic Church as Pope Leo XIV, after being elected the next Bishop of Rome, is making significant changes in the ranks of his church. First, it was Archbishop Ryś who replaced the more conservative Archbishop Jędraszewski in the post of the Archbishop of Krakow. Now, a similar change is taking place in New York with the appointment of Bishop Ronald Hicks as Archbishop of the Big Apple. But the change is credited with more than just a change of course. It is viewed as an opposition to President Trump himself. Gabriela Fesnak reports.
È sempre per la nostra vita cristiana.
2025 was a year of change for the Catholic Church. Pope Leo XIV, the first American elected to preside over the Catholic Church, succeeded Pope Francis after he succumbed to illness. Born Robert Francis Prevost, the Chicago native was met with positive reactions from all over the world and quickly surpassed his predecessor in popularity in his home country. However, his stance on immigration has ruffled some feathers in Washington.
I think that there's a deep reflection that needs to be made in terms of what's happening. Many people who've lived for years and years and years, never causing problems, have been deeply affected by what's going on right now.
Recently, he was called being more dangerous by some of the MAGA people than Pope Francis, mostly because of his last homily during the Christmas Eve, because he said that we Catholics, not Christians, but Catholics especially, we need to take care of those who are in need.
Recent high-level appointments reflect Pope Leo's views. One of the most important posts in North America, the Archbishopric of New York, has also seen a big change after Pope Leo appointed Bishop Ronald Hicks, a fellow Chicagoan, as the successor to Cardinal Timothy Dolan.
And if you want to know the core of who I am and what I stand for, you should know this. I love Jesus with my mind, heart, and soul, and I strive to love my neighbor as myself.
What Pope Leo faced many times from the U.S. Episcopal Conference was a lack of unity. And he's trying to build a more united team of bishops.
Poland, too, has seen a major seat filled. The long-serving former Krakow Archbishop Marek Jędraszewski was replaced by Archbishop Grzegorz Ryś. Archbishop Jędraszewski was known as a defender of traditional Catholicism against perceived threats, while the new archbishop is described as having a more pastoral approach, akin to Pope Leo.
All of us in the Catholic Church are building a home together, and we are all responsible for this home. What we need is to be a community which listens to each other.
Unlike many episcopal appointments shaped by lengthy consultations, Ryś was personally selected by Pope Leo XIV, an indication of papal trust and a desire for change in tone rather than doctrine. For TVP World, Gabriela Fesnak.
Voters in the Central African Republic have cast their ballots in unprecedented quadruple elections, but the results are still pending. At the stake is far more than just political power. Analysts warn the vote could determine the future of Russia's influence and access to key mineral resources in one of Africa's most fragile states. The incumbent president, Moscow's closest ally in the country, is widely seen as the frontrunner. Our Africa correspondent Sofia Ba reports.
The current president, Faustin Archange-Touadéra, is widely expected to secure a third term after a very controversial 2023 referendum that allowed him to seek additional terms.
Analysts say that a third-term victory would consolidate Russia's economic and security interests in the country. The Central African Republic is amongst Africa's first states to accept Russia's backed force, with Moscow seeking to help protect authorities and fight armed groups.
I see that many Central Africans have come to fulfill their civic duty, which is a good thing for our young democracy. I encourage them, as I did in my address to the nation and throughout the campaign period.
Although the security situation has improved since the civil war that started in 2010, it remains fragile in many areas of the country. Part of the opposition has decided to boycott the elections, describing it as a sham with a lack of political dialogue. The National Election Authorities claims to have accredited more than 1,700 national and international observers, including representatives from the European Union, the Economic Community of Central Africa, and the African Union.
I'm voting because I am Central African. It's everyone's duty. That's how we will overcome the challenges we face. If I don't vote today, our country risks falling into chaos.
We have wanted change so badly, and those who want change must get up and vote for it.
Escorted by Wagner mercenaries, Rwandans, and the Presidential Guard, President Touadéra has voted in the capital of Bangui. Rich in natural resources, the country is the last stronghold of the Wagner Group, where it has established itself as the government primary partner in terms of security in exchange with lucrative contracts regarding oil and diamond. Several human rights organizations accuse Wagner paramilitaries of committing serious crimes against human rights in Central Africa. Sophia Ba, Dakar, Senegal, for TVP World.
We might be off to a fresh start, but 2025 proved to be one of the strongest years for Polish medicine, thanks to major medical achievements ranging from obstetrics to advanced remote robotic surgeries. There were so many breakthroughs, in fact, that we decided to collect them all in one place to show you a bigger picture of the most important medical developments of the past year. Anastasia Yanchenko has this breakdown.
Polish surgeons have become European pioneers in long-distance telesurgery. This year alone, procedures were carried out remotely between Warsaw and Gdańsk, Warsaw and Belgium, and even Warsaw and Tashkent, covering distances of more than 4,000 kilometers.
The surgery that I performed, it was radical prostatectomy. So the patient is 60 years old with prostate cancer. So via telesurgery, we have removed the prostate. And what is very impressive, that the delay between Warsaw and Tashkent was only 100 milliseconds.
Polish medical professionals have advanced their robotic techniques in oncology, especially for treating endometrial cancer. This disease is a growing global health concern, causing around 2,000 deaths annually in Poland and ranking among the leading causes of cancer-related death in women. To fight the disease, doctors now use Da Vinci robotic systems, allowing patients to recover faster and with fewer complications.
And we did almost roughly 200 cases of endometrial cancer using robotic technique, which has a very big advantage. The patient, it's like a maximized oncological surgery with less trauma for the patient. Means that she can be discharged the next day from the hospital.
The robot acts as the surgeon's hands, eyes and voice. Surgeons operate from a console in the operating room, controlling the robot's arms and precisely maneuvering instruments inside the patient.
You can clearly see almost each vessel. You can coagulate each vessel. So that's the biggest advantage.
This year, Polish doctors also made major progress in removing sizable tumors, a serious health issue for many women. In Warsaw, surgeons successfully removed more than a 60-kilogram ovarian tumor from a patient.
We operate them in the cooperation with our colleagues from the Department of Gynecological department. It was a young woman, 24 years old, with such a huge cyst with a diameter of 40 centimeters.
Polish doctors are making major advances in saving lives, including those of patients who have not yet been born. These breakthroughs have helped many cases of serious fetal abnormalities, especially when it comes to twin pregnancies.
We use the laser to cut the connections in placenta, which are the cause of this very dangerous syndrome with a high mortality rate. And after these laser procedures, we can improve the conditions and the babies can survive.
In cardiology, Polish doctors are now using a new multi-port surgical robotic system. The first procedure was performed by Professor Piotr Suwalski of Warsaw's National Medical Institute, making him the first doctor in the world to use this technology during cardiac surgery. Altogether in Warsaw, surgeons have carried out around 650 robotic surgeries across various medical specialties.
to see how technology is moving forward. It's actually, you can count it in months now, not in decades, that every half a year you can see a new robot or new feature that is really changing your surgery. We perform the biggest volume of cardiosurgical robotical procedures in Europe, not only in Poland, but in Europe.
Polish medical professionals say they do not plan to stop at these achievements and aim for 2026 to follow suit. Anastasia Yanchenko, TVP World.
Tuxedos were dusted off and floor-length gowns brought out. This was New Year's Eve at Warsaw's Grand Theatre, the Polish National Opera. One of the country's most distinguished cultural institutions swapped everyday formality for full gala mode, hosting an audience dressed for the occasion. And for one night only, opera and ballet set the rhythm for welcoming the new year. Our reporter Karolina Szapland was there.
If you're looking to bid farewell to the old year and to usher the new one in a true high Warsaw style, there are few places more fitting than the Grand Theatre, the Polish National Opera. This year's theme was devised by the theatre's chief conductor, Maestro Patrick Fournier. The New Year's Eve gala unfolds as a musical story in 2 acts, following an American man living in New York as he sets off on a journey from Manhattan to Paris. The first act, full of rhythm and swing, immerses us in the musical world of New York City and its surroundings. In the second act, our hero arrives in the capital of chic, Paris. And for the audience, this night at the opera is one of rare distinction.
We've always loved the theater and opera. I'd already had the pleasure of spending New Year's Eve at the Philharmonic, and I truly believe it's an unforgettable experience. So when one of my friends, Agnieszka, surprised us by suggesting the opera this time, we jumped at the idea, even though getting tickets was far from easy.
It was an idea my wife first came up with nearly 5 years ago. This is our 5th New Year's Eve at the National Opera, and the second time we're sharing it with our beloved mother.
Actually, it's already a tradition. 4th year in a row we are coming to this Gala Silvestrova, and each year it's better and better. So we enjoy the performance, we enjoy the people, and actually the theater itself.
It's an unusually light and sparkling repertoire for such a distinguished institution. But perhaps the perfect way to step into the new year in style. And what are music lovers wishing for 2026?
What the world needs now is love and peace, and this is what I wish to everyone in the world.
What we need most of all in 2026 here in Poland and across the world is peace. And that's what we're all waiting for, that the war in Ukraine will finally come to an end.
We wish you a pleasant, happy new year and peace and love.
And happiness.
And I couldn't agree more. For TVP World, I'm Karolina Szapland.
As the new year, one of Ukraine's most important holidays, is behind us, Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed his nation in an end-of-the-year speech. Reflecting on the year past and a possible peace and its costs, Zelenskyy made some significant remarks. To discuss them, joining me on the program is Elizabeth Braw, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Security Initiative, the Atlantic Council. Good evening. Thank you for joining me on World News Tonight.
Good evening.
Let's take a look at the speech and some of the quotes that I prepared so that we can reflect on them. We want to end the war, not the end of Ukraine. And the new year, what is your forecast for Ukraine this coming year, these coming weeks in particular? Are we going to see the end to the war anytime soon?
Well, if things were ordinary in any way, we would probably be saying it is likely that we'll see an end to the war. But Vladimir Putin is willing to keep fighting this war against Ukraine, even though Russia is only making incremental progress. And that means that the war is likely to continue. and it's likely to continue even though peace negotiations are happening, because Vladimir Putin and the rest of the Russian leadership are not serious about these peace negotiations, which is what we have seen because Russia has kept attacking Ukraine throughout the peace negotiations, most recently in recent days. So if you are not serious about peace negotiations, you will keep building up the war as you go along with these talks. And that is what Russia is doing.
Mm-hmm. Zelenskyy also said a peace agreement is 90% ready, but warned that the remaining issues are decisive. He said those 10% contain, in fact, everything. The 10% that will determine the fate of peace, the fate of Ukraine and Europe. What would you say are these 10 particular percents that Volodymyr Zelenskyy referred to?
Only he and the negotiators know what he's referring to. We haven't seen the confidential details of the deal, but I think what he is flagging up is that these 10% could scupper the deal. It doesn't matter how much hard work the diplomats have done figuring out the rest. If there are crucial things that can scupper the deal at the end, we should remember that there are people involved in this peace process, including Vladimir Putin, who are willing to scupper the deal. So ordinarily, you would have diplomats who negotiate in good faith. And in a war, you would typically first have a ceasefire, then diplomats would sit down and negotiate a peace agreement. This time, we don't have a ceasefire. We have peace negotiations taking place even as war is continuing, with Russia showing that it's not particularly interested in finding any sort of resolution that would be a compromise. Russia says it wants peace, but it wants peace on purely Russian terms. So what is in those 10%, we don't know. But what we do know is that they could scupper the deal, and then we'll be back to where we started. But clearly, it is good that 90% has been resolved.
As I just said a moment ago, the 10% will determine the fate of peace, the fate of Ukraine, and the fate of Europe. So Europe is mentioned here. Why do you think that Zelenskyy mentions this 10% in relation to Europe? Would safety guarantees for Ukraine translate into safety guarantees for Europe directly?
It is a paradoxical situation that we are in as Europeans, as European countries, that yes, we all want the war to end, the war in Ukraine to end, but if it ends on terms that are detrimental to Ukraine, and in other words, highly beneficial to Russia, then that actually poses a threat to us, because Russia will emerge from such a peace, from such an unjust peace agreement, strengthened, and as a result of no longer being tied up with waging war against Ukraine, it could then turn its attention to other countries in Europe, which is why it's so important to get just peace, and a peace in which Russia makes concessions as serious as those the Ukrainians are being asked to make.
Mm-hmm. But we also heard from Vladimir Putin, not only from Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and in his speech, Putin avoided any mention of Ukraine, any mention of peace talks, or any plans to bring the war to an end. What message does it send to those outside of Russia, that Russia is seemingly looking for peace, but at the same time we have an end of the year peace, we're in the middle of peace talks, and he is not trying to make any mentions of it?
Well, in a sense, he's being honest. He's not interested in peace. And it was interesting to see, on a related note, that Russia, just in the past couple of days, tried to seriously undermine Ukraine, discredit Ukraine in the eyes of the Americans and Donald Trump in particular, by putting out this fake news story that Ukraine had attacked one of Putin's official residences or palaces. Now, that was a really nasty disinformation campaign, and extraordinarily, it was poorly executed by the Russians. It was obvious from the beginning that it was fake news, and we have now reached the point a few hours ago where Donald Trump on social media criticized Russia for having put out this fake news campaign. So this Russian effort to undermine Ukraine in these very sensitive peace negotiations by suggesting that Ukraine was escalating by attacking a presidential palace, that effort has backfired. But it shows that, again, once again, that Russia is not serious about these peace negotiations and will only make the necessary concessions if it sees no other way out.
One of the interesting things when we look at Vladimir Putin's speech from the beginning of 2026, the end of 2025, which we've just seen, and the one that we've seen right after the full-scale invasion in 2022 is a particular contrast. So there seems to be that contrast between these two. At the time, in 2022, he framed the war as a defensive response to Western hostility. However, this time he seems to be embellishing the war, what he called the special military operation. We heard that in his speech as well. He speaks to his soldiers, "You've taken on the responsibility of fighting for your homeland, for truth, for justice." Those are the words by Vladimir Putin. This shift between the narrative that we've seen and the narrative that we see today, what does it tell us about the attitude that Russia has going further into the fifth year of fighting Ukraine on their own turf?
It tells us that this war has taken much longer than Putin or any other Russian official had anticipated, and as a result, they can't sell the war on the basis that, oh, it's just going to take a few days. Clearly, 4 years later, it's not going to take a few days. So he has to make it all about a patriotic duty and essentially try to unite Russians behind a cause that, or behind, unite Russians together against the West, when one might suspect that quite a few Russians are becoming cynical about this war. We don't have reliable public opinion surveys in Russia, but if we did, it would be interesting to see what they show now 4 years into the war. A war that was sold to Russians as being a special military operation that would only last a few days.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining me on the program. It was great to have you back. Happy 2026 and hopefully a more peaceful one to you and your dear ones.
Happy New Year to you and to your viewers.
Thank you so much. That was Elizabeth Ross, Senior Fellow at the Transatlantic Security Initiative, the Atlantic Council. And so this would be all the latest news for now. Thank you for joining me here on World News Tonight. I'm Claudia Czerwińska, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news and features in just a moment.